I think it's a very unusual year for musicals. It's a very hard one to predict, in part because there's no clear critical frontrunner.
It's going to be fun to watch the Tonys.
Hello, I'm Patrick Pacheco. Welcome to Theater All the Moving Parts. Joining me for an exciting and incisive look at the 2024 Tony Award nominations are critics Sara Holdren of New York Magazine, Adam Feldman of Time Out, New York, and Jan Simpson, theater journalist and host of the Broadway radio shows Stagecraft and All the Drama. Welcome back, Jan and Adam, to Theater All the Moving Parts. And Sara, thank you for joining us. I want to get into the musical nominees first, but before that, I want to ask each of you, when you looked at the list of nominations, what did it say to you about the state of Broadway and the recently completed season? Jan, let's start with you.
That this is a transitional year for Broadway, that it's sort of looking for its identity. And so lots of different kinds of things got thrown against the wall.
Adam. Yeah, I think this was a very crowded season, especially for musicals, and I think we're seeing the results of that. There's a lot of great work in the supporting categories and a bit of a weakness on the top category for musicals, but very strong one for plays, I think.
15 original musicals, we should say, were competing for those 5 slots. Yeah. Sara, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true that there's a sort of transitional nature to it, but also like there's part of me that kind of hopes that variety stays present, you know, that an identity isn't settled on in a certain way. Because I thought it was really exciting to see things like Illinois and Stereophonic kind of like make their way up because people recognize something really exciting about them.
Well, thinking of those musicals that were nominated, it's usually the top prize, and it usually has the biggest impact at the box office. And you also get 5 minutes on the telecast to give it your best shot. And that's frequently what America sees of the musicals. And those musicals that will get a shot are Hell's Kitchen with 13 nominations, The Outsiders with 12, Water for Elephants with 7, Suffs with 6, and Illinois with 4. What are your impressions of the 5?
I think it's a very unusual year for musicals. It's a very hard one to predict, in part because there's no clear critical frontrunner among these 5. I think the nominators this year, with so many current musicals struggling to stay open, I think probably we're inclined to vote for musicals that are still running, just on that basis, when they have so many to choose from. And so the result is 5 shows that people like, but I'm not seeing one that people really love.
It's going to be fun to watch the Tonys.
Because there's no clear front.
It's real suspense.
Yeah.
And either one. Yeah, Sara, you mentioned Illinois, and you were glad that kind of came in. I think of all the shows that were mentioned, it certainly got the most critical consensus.
Well, it's a fascinating one because, it's a musical that it has a book, but it's a wordless book, as it were, you know, which is kind of fascinating. Like, it really commits to being this, a physical storytelling piece. So in a way, I think this is what it is, though. It's like, not only are the kind of opinions about them divided or a little bit across the board, but also like the shows themselves are really different. They just feel sort of hard to compare. Something like Suffs is difficult to hold up to next to something like Illinois and go, you know, how did each succeed in the project that they set out to do?
Yeah, and it could be interesting because one of the things that you notice about this year's nominations, the first thing that you notice is that 2 of the shows have more nominations than the others, right?
Right.
So Hell's Kitchen and The Outsiders, by that standard, would seem like the immediate favorites. But again, if their support is a little soft, then sometimes if there's more enthusiastic support for a show like Illinois among a smaller contingent, that might be enough to win at a plurality.
Smaller shows have been winning. I mean,
Yes.
Kimberly Akimbo, Fun Home.
For sure.
Band's Visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the smaller shows have been winning, the sort of the prestige shows. But I love a season when you've got Illinois and Huey Lewis and the News, which should not be on this list, but is a great fun time.
And Jan, you had mentioned when we were doing our spring preview that stuff had good bones. It was a question of whether they did enough work in order to pull it out of what you thought its flaws were. They did?
It didn't quite get there for me, but they get a lot of points for working really hard on that show. And that's why I was glad to see it on the list, because they put the work in. And they listened to what people were saying when the show was downtown. And so a lot of the elements that didn't work were moved aside. And they have somewhat of a crowd pleaser, I think, particularly for, I could see lots of mothers and daughters going.
I want my mother to know I was here. I want my sisters to know I was here. I want my great-granddaughter to know I was here. I want my students to know I was here. I want my niece to know I was here. I want your great-granddaughter to know I was here.
Jana Taub wrote the book, wrote the score, and starred in it. She was nominated for book and score, but not for her performance in it. We should also say that Outsiders and Water for Elephants were also shows that started as books, were then adapted into films, and now are adapted into musicals.
Was The Notebook.
As was The Notebook, which was not part of this list.
Back to the Future started as a film. There's a lot of film adaptations.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that, again, both with Outsiders and Water for Elephants, there were very successful elements in it. Certainly the fun part of Water for Elephants is the circus, the circus parts of it, the acrobatics, and I thought that Jessica Stone, who was the director, did a seamless job for the first time of weaving those circus arts to tell a compelling narrative story.
Yeah, Cirque du Soleil tried it a few years ago with Paramore, and it didn't connect. They didn't succeed in making it any kind of interesting story. This one does a lot better with that.
It has a stronger book.
Yeah, it has a stronger book.
By Rick Ellis, a veteran book writer.
And of the shows this year, of the 5 shows that are nominated for Best Musical, Suffs is the one that holds together the most strongly as a new musical.
Yeah, I agree.
It's shaped that way. It has a strong score, a strong musical theater score, with real emotional moments dramatized in the score.
Suffs really does, I think, do a great job, accessing that place of, like, these are fun to listen to, they're witty, they're interesting, and they're specifically embedded in this story with these characters. I also think it's getting slightly underrated.
We should say Outsiders was able to do what I think a couple of other shows did as well, is put rain on the stage in a very
It was so rainy
manner.
Rainy season. It was a monsoon. It was a monsoon.
It was fire too. Fire, rain,
Fire and rain.
Fire, and I've seen it.
It was a very effective storytelling, I thought, with a beautiful ensemble of actors.
A physically beautiful ensemble of actors, and that's how it's being marketed. They're really using that a lot, which is interesting about how Broadway marketing is going. It is a young adult story, and I think they're going for a young adults audience, and specifically sort of a young adults female audience.
Well, it's the boys against the girls if it's Suffs and the Outsiders. Hell's Kitchen, of course, has Alicia Keys, so it's loosely based on her growing up at Manhattan Plaza.
And some people felt that the dramatic stakes were not high enough. And I feel like that was the right choice for this material, because the songs of Alicia Keys are not written to be, for the most part, big dramatic songs. They sit in a certain place. They're meant. They create a vibe. And Camille Brown's dances in this are amazing, I think.
Great choreography.
And so all of that fills in
shows.
the holes in what the score presents in the show.
Get ready to write your own story.
We should move on to Best Revival. Do we
Yes.
feel that Merrily We Roll Along is the front runner by virtue of, I suppose, that it's a Sondheim musical that flopped in in 1981 when it was originally presented, and has come back in a production directed by Maria Friedman, in which there seemed to be a consensus among the critics that somehow the problems had been solved.
I think it's the front runner by virtue of the fact that it's fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, I really do. I feel like it's a special production, and one of the things that's special about it is that those three stars, I mean, they are undeniably names that are attracting people, but they're not just that. They really are doing something special in that show.
It's our time, breathe it in. Worlds to change and worlds to win. Our turn coming through. Me and you, pal, me and you.
The part of this musical is that the characters aren't likable enough. That's always been the problem. People just haven't figured out how to make it work. The answer is, it turns out, cast 3 phenomenally likable performers, and then that will do the work for you. And so that they make the show work. And so it's going to win. It deserves to win. I actually, in this category, what is annoying to me is the overlook, and this is general throughout the categories, of the Who's Tommy, which I think is...
What do you mean the
But
overlook?
it's there, it's there.
No, I mean,
you think it's
nominated
underrated?
here, and it's not nominated anywhere else.
Oh, do you share that the Who's Tommy is underrated, or other than Merrily We Roll Along, which would you pitch as in the best position to pull an upset in this category?
Well, there isn't going to be an upset in this category, but I thought the Who's Tommy was really well done. And particularly since Des McAnuff did the original production and then came back and reimagined it, envisioned it. And I actually liked this production better than I did the original.
And the lead actor and the titular character is
Ali
terrific and not nominated. Ali Lewis
Borsky.
Yes, thank you very much.
Borsky, yeah.
Tell me what you thought of the controversial response to the revival of Cabaret.
I think what's controversial about it is that it did so well in London and took all of the awards there and got a lot of praise. And I don't.
What did you
is,
think? I mean, do you think that it was overpraised in London? What did you think of the show?
Well,
itself?
I wondered if Jessie Buckley, who played Sally Bowles there, if she brought something different to it that might have uplifted it here. I think Eddie Redmayne had a very difficult job because to reimagine this iconic character of the MC, isn't embedded into the storytelling, the narrative. He's outside it, and it's a very unusual role. Alan Cumming did reimagine it different from what Joel Grey did. It seemed to me that Eddie was working too hard to make his character different, and it just made it awkward.
It's a great musical, and that book by Joe Masteroff is one of the most brilliant books ever written. It's still indestructible.
I mean, they really did a good job, dragging it into an unnuanced and, strangely sort of uncompelling place, though. I mean, for me, it's just there's that central performance. As you say, I think it's actually Eddie Redmayne's performance is a microcosm for the show because it is trying too hard. It is all about external gesture. It is all about sort of what can I do to be different and weird, as opposed to what is this show about?
Yes.
What else does my character need to be doing?
Outside it is winter, but here it is so hot. Every night I battle with the ghosts to stop them from taking off all of their clothing. So don't go away, who knows? Tonight we may lose the battle.
Merrily We Roll Along, recouped, it's a hit. Gutenberg, recouped, it's a hit. What did we think about it being nominated as Best Revival?
Gutenberg's delightful. It's cute. I mean, it was a success, and I actually probably would have nominated both of its stars for Best Actor in a Musical. I think they were great. and they were on stage the entire time.
My God.
Bud spent 3 days at the FedEx Kinko's.
They thought I was insane.
But is this insane? Because when I wear this hat, I'm a boot black.
And I'm a woman.
We're going to go to the lead actress in a musical. Eden Espinosa for Lampico, Malaya Joy Moon for Hell's Kitchen, who we've talked about, Kelly O'Hara for Days of Wine and Roses, Marianne Plunkett, The Notebook, and Gail Rankin, Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club. Sara, what jumps out at you among these nominees?
There really is this sort of stylistic wide slate this year. Like, you have an incredibly classical performance like Kelly O'Hara's. You have this like really wonderful newcomer in Malia Joy Moon. I mean, for me, I kind of, even though I have mixed feelings overall about Hell's Kitchen, her performance is really, really special. And it was exciting to see somebody bring a new voice to Broadway that actually sounded unique and distinctive and rich.
Kelly O'Hara was just phenomenal in Days of Wine and Roses, a beautiful performance and an incredibly demanding one musically and in terms of the acting. So I think for me it's between those two.
Yeah.
You look at this list and you say, what do the nominators think a leading lady, a leading performer in a musical should be? And I can't tell from the list because it is, as Sara says, so all over the place. Very different kinds of performances, very different kinds of actors. My heart is with Kelly O'Hara. I mean, we all know that she has this phenomenal voice, but I thought she took her acting to another level in this.
Notebook did not get very good reviews. It didn't do particularly well. I think it got 3 nominations among them. Marianne Plunkett certainly walked away with reviews, as did Dorian Harewood, in terms of their contributions to The Notebook. And she's been, this is her 10th Broadway show.
I think that in this year, as good as she is, and she's wonderful in the show, I think that it's too small. They're basically all featured roles. They split up all 3 of those. There's 3 people playing each of the 2 main parts in that show.
Strangely, I would compare her and Gail Rankin because I think that they're both doing, in certain ways, extremely strong work in kind of compromised surroundings. It's like undeniable that both of them are incredibly strong performers.
Lead actor in a musical, Brody Grant in The Outsiders, Jonathan Groff in Merrily We Roll Along, Dorian Harewood in The Notebook, Brian Darcy James, Days of Wine and Roses, and Eddie Redmayne, Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club. We've discussed some of the performances already, but in terms of who do you think is the front runner in this category?
It's Jonathan Groff. I mean, there are certain categories that Merrily is nominated in that I think it's just very hard to look at them and say that anything else is gonna beat it.
Who says lonely at the top? I say let it never stop. It's our time coming through, all our dreams coming true. Working hard, getting rich, being happy. There's a switch.
Brian Darcy James has been in 16 Broadway shows.
And he is wonderful.
This is his 5th nomination.
So good
he
in Days
is
of Wine and Roses.
Yeah.
never
He
won.
He is fantastic.
It'll just be our secret. Imagine this is our boat and this is our river, the only light, a chapel of stars, the only sound this land.
I mean, not only is Jonathan Groff really good in this, but he's just, people talk about beloved people on Broadway. He's just beloved. I have read so many stories over the past season where Jonathan Groff is identified as X's best friend. And I believe it. I mean, it's like Jonathan Groff has 75 best friends.
Here's to us. Who's like us? Damn few.
Brody Grant was one of many actors who made their Broadway debut in The Outsiders. There were a lot of Broadway debuts among all the shows that we're discussing. 17 Broadway debuts in Water for Elephants. And I would...
All the circus people.
Yes, and I would think also for Suffs. But there were quite a few, and I thought he acquitted himself beautifully.
Yeah,
in
it's a
The
little bit like
Outsiders.
Malia for me. He has a very interesting voice. It's not a voice that sounds like a 16-year-old to me, but it's
But
a
of course
very
he's
interesting,
not.
powerful voice. Yeah, he's 10 years older than I am. He has a disadvantage a bit of being saddled with two of the worst wigs on Broadway.
So true.
And they don't make any sense.
Yeah, I couldn't
And
stop looking at them.
true.
Yeah, you can't. That hurts. That's a kneecap, by the way.
Yes, I'm afraid so, but perhaps despite that, he'll have a great career with better wigs in the future. Dorian Harewood in The Notebook returned after 46 years. That was the last time he was on Broadway. And again, it was a superb performance and did very, very well. And we've discussed Eddie Redmayne as well.
I mean, they're all
but-
good performances, but I don't think it's a competitive.
Well,
Right. I mean, 4 of them are good performances. But I don't think it's a very competitive category.
It would be lovely if Brian does a surprise, because that
that's
was
what-
an incredible performance.
and also because you know that Jonathan Groff would be the first to stand up.
Absolutely.
Because
He's his best friend.
Exactly.
There are a number of actors in this particular category, featured actress in a musical, probably the most nominations of any category. Shoshana Bean in Hell's Kitchen, Amber Iman in Lempicka, Nikki M. James in Suffs, Leslie Rodriguez-Kritzer in Monty Python Spamalot, Keisha Lewis in Hell's Kitchen, Lindsay Mendez in Merrily We Roll Along, and B.B. Newworth in Cabaret.
This is just a heartbreakingly good year for this category, and one of them is going to have to win, and I would be fine with pretty much any of them winning. That said, I think that probably Lindsay Mendez is the front runner here.
Now, she won previously for Carousel.
Yes, but again, it's that excitement factor that this revival is generating. That
Also,
said,
she was terrific.
she is
as
so
Mary.
good in it.
I mean, she's the heart of that show.
I don't know who we are anymore, and I'm starting not to care. Look at us, Charlie. Nothing's the way that it was. I want it the way that it was. Help me stop.
But this is part of
As an
why
al-
this ensemble is so special, is because they are actually, I think what they're doing is peeling back the sort of layers of surface cynicism that have
Yeah.
affected that show. You know, that show has been very plagued by kind of like, ladies' lunch type of like vibe, and they're all playing with such heart.
I wouldn't count out Keisha Lewis.
I wouldn't
in,
either.
In
That
Hell's
was a
Kitchen. Now,
wonderful
they may
performance.
cancel out each other because Shoshana Bean is also nominated in the same category, but Keisha Lewis, the quality of her voice
Yeah.
is what is so beautiful in many respects.
You were in pain. That pain led you here. Listen to that pain. Do something with it.
Well, yeah, and also like we were talking about voices before, it's an unusual star performance voice. She really goes low in this musical. She's singing in a contralto range for most of her part, and it's a deep, rich, powerful, earthy sound.
And it's so perfect for the role.
Yeah.
I mean, it just fits the role
Yeah.
like a glove.
Given the smallness of the role of Nikki M. James in Suffs, were you surprised that she
I
made the
was. I
final
would have
cut?
gone with Jen Colella, who I thought was just
She was wonderful.
really wonderful in the role.
I would-
I'm not undercutting Nikki. I mean, she's a terrific performer, but Jen Colella's role was a larger role and a more difficult, a more nuanced role, I think, than.
And
Nikki's.
Amber Iman in Lempicka as Rafaela really sold the show for me in many respects.
Give back my life. Give back my heart. Give back the time I didn't know you. Give back my life. Give back my heart. You think I don't love you. Give back my life. It's torture.
I think she's a really strong spot in that show. Just her, I think her, along with her voice, her presence is so grounded and gorgeous. I mean, frankly, she and George Abbott were the most fun to watch for me by far.
I also just want to throw in Leslie Rodriguez-Kritzer. Great to see her finally getting a chance to really pull out the stops on Broadway. That was really just a terrific performance.
And there's nothing you can do. You can do.
But this whole category is a joy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Bebe Neuwirth. She's and she's wonderful.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. She's won twice.
She's won
twice
twice.
before.
Yeah, she'll be okay.
and well deservedly as well. Featured actor in a musical. Roger Bart, Back to the Future. Joshua Boone, The Outsiders. Brandon Victor Dixon, Hell's Kitchen. Sky Lakota Lynch, The Outsiders. Daniel Radcliffe, Merrily We Roll Along. Stephen Skybell, Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club. Again, a very competitive category. I would suppose that, I guess, if Merrily We Roll Along does what we think it's going to do, Daniel Radcliffe.
Early we roll over the competition.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
What's great about Daniel Radcliffe is he made such a commitment to Broadway in turning around his early career, as Harry Potter. This is his 5th show and his first nomination. So it means that if you stick in there, eventually the nominators are going to recognize the work that you're doing.
Part of what I love about his performance, he does an amazing Franklin Shepherding. He kills it. But part of what I love about his performance overall is that he is so visibly happy to be on stage. Like, he loves what he's doing. It's like watching like an incredibly talented, when you see like a high school kid adore being in a play, but I mean that in the best way.
Yes.
It's really beautiful.
It's true to the spirit of what they wanted to do in the first production of the musical, which is cast all these young people, get that spirit of young people instead of the spirit of the broken older people. And he, I don't think it's not a high school level performance. It's a very strong adult professional performance, but it does capture a quality of that glee and that excitement and that joy.
Brandon Victor Dixon in Hell's Kitchen, Sky Lakota Lynch, Jan.
I guess my second choice would be Stephen Skybell.
Yeah.
In Cabaret.
It's not a flashy role. It's not a big role, but he makes the most of every moment that he has there. And he and Bebe Neuwirth provide the only emotion, for me at any rate, in that production. Yeah.
And I felt that way with Sky Lakota Lynch as well, being able to carry the emotional part of The Outsiders and capturing that youthful energy that you were talking about in terms of...
Well, I found Joshua Boone, I couldn't take my eyes off him.
I agree. I think
when
he's
he
really
was
compelling.
when he was on stage, it was just sort of wherever he was where the action was for me.
And certainly Roger Bart in the most commercial show of the season, Back to the Future, was working his butt off.
If they don't meet, they won't fall in love, they won't get married, and neither you nor your siblings will ever be born.
Whoa, this is heavy.
Well, that does it for a very, very involved and detailed conversation about the musical. We're taking a break now. Coming up, we'll be discussing the Tony nominations for plays. It's been a banner year for them. Welcome back. I'm Patrick Pacheco. Let's get into the Tony nominations for plays with critics Sara Holdren of New York Magazine, Adam Feldman of Time Out, New York, and Jan Simpson, theater journalist and podcaster. So let's go. Jaja's African Hair Braiding by Jocelyn Bio, Mary Jane by Amy Ertzog, Mother Play by Paula Vogel, Prayer for the French Republic by Joshua Harmon, and Stereophonic by David Ajmi. There's a juggernaut here, I think, in the 13 nominations, a record 13 nominations for Stereophonic. Shall we start with Stereophonic and why it got a record 13?
Well, it's a play. But it also got some nominations from music.
Orchestrations
and
score.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so that boosted, and it just ate up all of the categories of supporting actors because it has such a fantastic ensemble of actors. And so I think there were 3 supporting actors and 2 supporting actresses.
Yeah.
And Will Butler from Arcade Fire for
Stereophonic.
which is sort of the front, I guess, drop the sort of, is the front runner.
Yeah, it's interesting because that obscures a little bit the extent to which it was a really good play season on Broadway, I think. And these other nominees, Mary Jane especially, which is just, I think, a gorgeous play that everyone should see, but also Mother Play and Jaja's and Prayer, even Patriots, which wasn't nominated. This is a strong, I mean, I didn't love it, but in another year it would be a strong note. This is a strong year.
It was a great season for American playwrights, and also all the musicals that we discussed were by Americans as well.
Just one thing I think Stereophonic is doing that when you say, it swept the supporting nominations, it's true. And to me, I actually feel like it's sort of pointing out that there is a bit of old-fashionedness in the Tonys in this sort of, lead, supporting, like they're, especially in plays, maybe more so in musicals. I do think we're in this really beautiful age of the ensemble. And the fact that there isn't a Tony for Best Ensemble is just something I think people will maybe be talking about a little bit more, not just with Stereophonic, but even something like Mary Jane.
I think one of the things that makes Stereophonic stand out also compared to some of these others is that it is long. I mean, it's a really substantial 3-hour.
You commit.
You commit. Prayer for the French Republic was also long. But, Mary Jane and Mother Play and Jaja's are short. And they feel short. So I think that Tony voters historically tend to like long plays.
It's structured in a very different way. And I think they may be awarding that too.
Yeah.
Although my heart is with Vogel's Mother Play.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought you were going to say Mary Jane because that was very emotionally moving as well.
It was.
And it's so beautifully underplayed, and Rachel McAdams has taken the role. You saw Carrie Coon in it, I
yes,
think, right?
And
I think all 3 of us did.
I was worried when I read that Rachel McAdams was doing it because I don't think she's done any stage work since high school.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I don't know, a movie star coming in to do this very difficult role. And boy, did she prove me wrong.
We should say that the lead character, played by Rachel McAdams, is a mother who has the fate of Job imposed upon her. She has a severely disabled child, now 2.5, who was born premature at 25 weeks.
I wish you many more children someday.
Oh, I don't know, Haya. Maybe wish me a 2-bedroom closer to the subway for now.
I was willing to believe in her on the basis of slings and arrows alone. I was like...
Well, I was nervous too, especially Mary Jane was my favorite play of 2017, and it won the New York Drama Critics Circle Award. And it's a play that I remember very fondly and very specifically, and I was worried that this wouldn't live up to that version, but I think that Rachel McAdams does a lovely job in it.
If you found Mother Play very moving, what did you find moving about it?
Well, I mean, I'm a Paula Vogel devotee, so there's that. But this is a very, on the surface, it may seem a somewhat sentimental play, but this is a very rough, tough play, looking at how do you forgive, love a very difficult parent. It just seemed to me that Paula Vogel is, I think, 71, 72 years old, And this is based largely drawn from her life. And there were a lot of mothers who parented baby boom children who shared a lot of the qualities that this mother has. And it's sort of like a generational reckoning of letting the anger go. And I thought she just did it in just a very graceful way.
Those of us who lived through the AIDS epidemic certainly encountered those mothers a lot, who just could not take it.
I agree with everything you're saying, and I do think also that Mary Jane and Mother play make a beautiful pair this year because they balance each other out so well. You've got in Mother play, Mary Jane, you've got this mother who is so positive about her mothering and so there for it, even though she has this very difficult challenge in her child. And on the other side, you have this mother of very gifted children, loving and intelligent and healthy, and she hates being a mother and is bad at it.
You mentioned the epic nature of Stereophonic, or at least the length of it. Certainly, Prayer for the French Republic fits into that category. It's a long play, and it's as epic as Leopoldstadt. Again, about a family and there's a time-traveling element as well. We see them during the war years, and then we see them a little bit closer to our time. In any other time, it would almost be a front-runner for the best play. Joshua Harmon did a wonderful job, I thought, of balancing all the elements.
I feel very cool about Prayer for the French Republic.
I did too.
Which I think is because, so for me, I feel like, I'm going to contrast it with Stereophonic because yes, they both, they have this quality of the long play. But with Stereophonic, I feel like David Ajmi is writing the play that he has to write. And it is meticulous and it's specific and the characters are built beautifully and the length doesn't feel performative, the length feels necessary to the development of that story. Prayer for the French Republic to me felt a little bit like, I'm gonna write a big play in a bit more of a like, in a sort of like the playwright is very present, kind of doing things that feel a little bit like, awards baity, frankly.
I didn't feel that at all about Joshua Harmon. I would push back on that only insofar as I thought it was a play that he had to write. I think every play on this list is something that comes from deep within, and you wouldn't be in this business in a way, and you wouldn't kind of put yourself through it unless you were committed to your subject matter.
I liked a lot of things about Prayer for the French Republic, but I agree with Sara. For me, I felt a little manipulated by some of the writing, and I felt like, especially at the end, there was this big data dump of arguments that didn't feel like they came organically out of what we had seen before in the play. I like Joshua Harmon very much as a playwright, but I think this is something that he's done before. I had the same problem with Bad Jews a little bit, and I loved Bad Jews most of the play, and then I just felt like at the end it wrapped up in a way that I wasn't. So,
Jan, were you cool on it?
No, I liked it a lot. I liked it better than I liked Leopoldstadt.
And that was the best play winner of last season. And I don't think that Jocelyn Bio necessarily said, I'm going to write a commercial play for Broadway. I think it was all in the line of plays that she had already written. Jaja's African Hairbrain.
I enjoyed Jaja.
Which was a wonderful, again, ensemble work of actors together in this Harlem. I don't know that it was anything necessarily original, but certainly the context was original and the characters that we met were original.
I was so happy to see that, the Tonys does not have a spot for best hair and makeup, and I was very happy to see that there's gonna be a special honoring of the designer in that, because that feat was unbelievable, just incredible. And the way the actors learned how to participate with it, the way it jumps in time.
There are 3 nominees for Best Revival of a Play: Appropriate, or Appropriate, however way you want to pronounce it, by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins; Enemy of the People by Ibsen, adapted by Amy Herzog; and Pearly Victorious, the revival by Ossie Davis. It's a great slate of plays.
Actually, hard to compare.
Yeah, but I think Appropriate is probably the lead here.
Again, another epic play. It's nearly 3 hours as well.
And a play about white people by a playwright of color.
And his Broadway debut as well. It's interesting that he makes his Broadway debut writing about white people, as Larissa Fast Horse made her Broadway debut writing Thanksgiving play, and as Young Ji Lee made her Broadway debut by writing about straight white men.
Yeah, there's a trend there. It's an unfortunate trend, but there's a trend there.
Unfortunate, why?
Well, one would like to think that a play like Jaja's African Hair Braiding, a play by a black playwright with a large black cast, can also find a home on Broadway, as this one did.
Well, Pearly Victorious was that this season, and that was
glorious
a beautiful revival, very well received. And we haven't gotten to the acting categories yet, but there are some terrific contenders from that show here. I do agree that it seems like appropriate/appropriate year.
Because it is about a white Southern family coming to terms with their racist roots. They go back to the old plantation.
Oh, it's very much about race. The show is very much about race.
And discover photographs that in the basement that were of lynchings.
Yeah.
And they had to confront their
Well, that's the whole thing. Whenever people say race, they think of black and brown people. Hello, white people also have
it's a
racial
show about
thoughts.
race. Yeah.
It's one of the interesting things. Yeah, and that's why I think that the show is so interesting, and why that weird thing that we were just talking about works in this instance is that usually race goes without comment in shows about white people.
Yeah.
And this is a show about white people in which their whiteness is the central issue. So that is a very interesting tension for me.
And I don't think that Pearly Victorious, a 1961 play, would necessarily have been revived had Leslie Odom Jr. not wanted to do it. He's one of the producers, in fact. But it was a glorious revival directed by Kenny Leon.
And such a heavy lift, because this show is a comedy that's more than 60 years old. It's a comedy about race that's more than 60 years old, and it could have been so bad. It could have landed so badly, and instead it found this perfect balance. It was joyful. It was cutting. It felt modern.
I'm gonna really give you something to arrest me for.
I don't care, boy. I'm still a white man.
Congratulations. I told you 20 years ago this bullwhip was gonna change hands one of these days.
Pearly, wait.
Stay out of my struggle for power.
You can't do wrong just because it's right.
And never kick a man when he's down.
That's why I was glad to see Kenny Leon on the list, because it really is a delicate balance. Because a lot of the characters could come across as stereotypes or caricatures.
We should talk about Enemy of the People, which again was a wonderful revival. I mean, really superb revival, adapted by Amy Herzog, who we just talked about.
And directed by her husband, Sam Gold. And again, a beautiful ensemble cast. Any number of which could have been nominated.
I really responded to it. I loved it for Circle in the Round. Circle and Square, actually. There was something about the way in which that play has to be about the polis, has to be about the kind of, has to all climb. I'm doing so well. There was something about the way in which that play all has to climax in that horrible community meeting that was beautiful in that space. And I was also really taken by those two, again, we have these two sort of TV star American guys who I actually thought were giving like performances that were quiet.
Yes.
In an appealing way.
Yes. They were serving the play as instead of using the play to glorify them. I think they really served the play.
And Jeremy Strong is a theater actor, and I remember seeing him. It was interesting for me when he was cast in Succession, because I had seen him on stage a number of times, and it's always one of those moments when someone that has been your secret, or suddenly is like Adam Driver was the same way. Adam Driver was in everything for a couple seasons in New York.
Since you mentioned Jeremy Strong, we probably should jump ahead to lead actor in a play. William Jackson Harper, Uncle Vanya, Leslie Odom Jr., Pearly Victorious, Liev Schreiber, Doubt, Jeremy Strong, An Enemy of the People, and Michael Stuhlbarg, Patriots. Why don't we go ahead and just go through your favorites in this category and what you liked most about them.
This is a funny category. It feels a little funny, but Leslie Odom Jr. is up there for me. I loved his performance. Just as we were just talking about with Pearlie, I feel like those have to be calibrated so carefully and also pack all this comic energy. And he was wonderful. I also really enjoyed Jeremy Strong's performance. Yeah, I mean, I think those for me feel strongest.
My favorite performance of the five is Michael Stuhlbarg. I think he is handicapped this year by the fact that Patriots is a less well-liked play. I think that will hurt Michael Stuhlbarg, but I loved his performance, and I love him as an actor, and I'd be very happy to see him win. I think it will probably just come down to Jeremy Strong or Leslie Odom Jr.
Jen, what do you think it's going to come down to?
Well, I agree with them, and I suppose I would go with Leslie. I was not taken with Michael Stuhlbarg's performance. It seemed to me one of those performances where he used the play to serve him as opposed to serving.
It was a vaudevillian performance, as Boris Berezovsky, this billionaire who unfortunately puts Putin in power, and then
it was a performance that started big and then just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
I must say that I was taken by William Jackson Harper in Uncle Vanya. I thought he was a revelation to me.
When they're not sure what label to paste on my forehead, they call me weird. I'm a weird man. I love the forest. That's weird. I don't eat meat. That's weird. It's like we can't have any authentic connection with each other anymore, or with nature. Nope.
Did you not see his Primary Trust off-Broadway?
I did not. In lead actress in a play, Betsy Adam, Prayer for the French Republic, Jessica Lange, Mother play, Rachel McAdams, Mary Jane, Sarah Paulson, Appropriate, Amy Ryan, Doubt. What do you think, Sarah?
Jessica Lange is giving a beautiful performance in that show.
I don't remember what I did to my children. I don't remember, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Let me get you a Kleenex.
Oh, no, I don't remember.
Here we go.
What's one of the things that's really gorgeous and interesting about that show is watching both Jessica Lange and Paula Vogel relate with this history of the American memory play, and like watching Jessica Lange play Amanda Wingfield and watching her play, like Blanche Dubois, sort of watching her play,
and Mary Tyrone.
Yeah,
you see echoes of Mary Tyrone.
Be haunted by these other figures, which I think Paula is very aware of and is filtering into the character, and Jessica Lange is obviously so built for that as a performer, that kind of fragility and delicacy, but then also with these moments of cruelty or these moments of extreme hardness. And she really is.
Is she your choice?
Is she my choice? Ooh, I mean, this is tough. Let's see. Man, wow, this is a really tough one, actually. I don't know if I can actually make my choice in this moment. I think all three in the middle for me are like, that's what I'm gonna have to sit with. Jessica Lange, Rachel McAdams, and Sarah Paulson. I mean, they're all leaving it out there.
This is an interesting yeah, those three I think are the front runners. It's an interesting category.
Can you make your choice at this point?
Well, I am between two for me, which is Jessica Lange and Sarah Paulson. I think Sarah Paulson is probably going to win, because in part she hasn't won before and she is well liked and she's a very good actor. And Jessica Lange won fairly recently for playing Mary Tyrone in Long Day's Journey into Night. She has also played Amanda Wingfield on Broadway.
Does that win it for you, Jen?
I saw Sarah Paulson so long ago, and I wonder if there is going to be recency bias, because Jessica Lange is so wonderful in this role, and most people will have seen it more recently than they saw Sarah.
Well, as a Tony voter, I can tell you that they re-invite you to come and see it if you.
But there's so much to see that I don't know that people can get to
I think there's also a question, like, as there sometimes is in these categories of like best acting versus most acting, you know, like, I mean, and sometimes they overlap, but it's like Sarah Paulson is blowing the back off of that theater.
All this life you live, what's it for if no one's there to tell you about it?
Whereas like Rachel McAdams is giving this very beautiful, very small in certain ways performance, and so it's it's kind of what are people attracted to?
I think Rachel McAdams is great in this show. I also think that the nomination is kind of the win in this case for her first performance on Broadway, and so I think it does come down to the other two for me.
And particularly nice for Amy Ryan, who came in at the last minute to take over for Tyne Daly, who became ill and couldn't do Doubt. And so it's a nice way to acknowledge a lot of work she did
at the last minute.
But I bet if Betsy Adam is also playing a mother in this, and Amy Ryan is playing a mother in name. It's a sister, not a mother.
Best mother.
Yeah, but I bet that Tyne Daly would be a contender in this had she been in it. No knock on Amy Ryan, who did a terrific job with almost no prep. But I think this production was built around Tyne Daly.
Yeah.
Equally competitive is the category Featured Actress in a Play. Quincy Tyler Bernstein, Doubt, Juliana Canfield, Stereophonic, Celia Keenan Bolger, Mother Play, Sarah Pidgeon, Stereophonic, and Cara Young, Pearly Victorious. You mentioned Cara Young a little earlier with Enthusiasm.
And since Henrietta's husband, Horace was already dead from heart trouble.
Gunshot wound.
His heart stopped beating, didn't it?
Yes.
Precisely, Rem Pearly. Precisely.
I mean, what she did in that show was brilliant. It was, I was teaching at the time, and I was trying to send my students to the show because I was like, this is an acting class. Like, watch this person, because I also think we don't, in general, in this country, we tend to take comedy less seriously, and we tend to take the chops actually required for real, incredible comedy less seriously. And what she was doing up there, so specific, so big, but with scale that actually that functioned, that didn't erase the character's heart.
I'm sticking with Mother Play.
Okay.
I thought Celia Keenan Bolger was just incredible. And the less known name of the three, Jim Parsons, Jessica Lange, but I thought she was the anchor of that play.
I love everyone in this category. I think Sarah Pidgeon has a strong chance of winning for Stereophonic. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for that show, and that helps her in this category. But
what I was struck with Sarah Pidgeon was it was like Star is Born.
Yeah.
I had never heard of her before. Had you? Has any of you?
No, I've never seen her.
I was riveted. I couldn't keep my eyes off of her. She sang beautifully, and what a presence.
And her character has the biggest arc in the play.
Yeah.
So if someone, if you're coming from the outside and you want to award the acting in Stereophonic, and you want to sort of pick one person to be emblematic of the ensemble.
Well, the engineer, Grover,
he's
also
wonderful.
has an
Well,
arc.
yeah,
Eli.
He has an arc.
He does.
Eli Gelb.
But it's a subtler arc.
I
And
also
we'll
think
get-
that Sarah Pidgeon's performance actually subtly changed as it went to Broadway for me, and I think she was doing for the better. Like, I think it went off Broadway, you could more easily see her as completely the victim of sort of Peter, her boyfriend's domineering, sort of band leader character. And I feel like they've done these little recalibrations where Sarah Pidgeon's character has her own set of flaws, her own set of weaknesses, her own set of cruelties, and they're more assertive. And it really, there's something happening in her performance that actually makes the play even more balanced to me now.
Best category Featured Actor in a Play. Will Brill, Stereophonic. Eli Gelb, who is Grover in Stereophonic. Jim Parsons in Mother Play. Tom Pasinka in Stereophonic, who plays Peter. And Corey Stahl, Appropriate. Again, another really strong category. Jan, let's start with you.
Well, I just wonder if the Stereophonic guys are going to sort of cancel one another out, and if Jim Parsons' fame will give him an extra boost.
It's also a very sympathetic character he's playing.
You know, so it's hard. And in full disclosure, Eli Gelb is my neighbor's son. So
he's your best friend.
Erica, Dan, I'm rooting for Eli. So.
I think that Corey Stoll does have a strong chance in this category. He's a great actor. He's been doing a lot of great work for a long time. And the three guys from Stereophonic are competing against each other. So that will help Corey Stoll. That said, this is another one of in this year, because of that ensemble work we were talking about before, I think it'll probably be Will or Eli from Stereophonic. Tom Pacinka is great in it, but his character's too dislikable.
When you think of it, Will's character is not really a better person than Tom's character.
No, it's not.
but he's
fun.
Yeah, he's fun. And he has some early scenes that really help make the show the most familiar to audiences, theater audiences in New York. He's done Broadway before. He's done a lot of good work off Broadway, especially with David Cromer in his shows. So if all things are equal, then that might help tip the balance.
Man, this is another really tough one for me. It is true because it's really hard picking between the Stereophonic guys. I mean, it's funny because I might be going with your neighbor's son too. I love Eli's performance. I really do. Yeah. I think there's something so. Speaking of actually, I mean, it's not nearly as long as that, the Phyllis Ballet, the silent moment with Jessica Lange, but the end of Stereophonic with Eli alone and silent on stage is one of the most beautiful parts of the show to me.
We have to wrap up, but in terms of what Broadway is obviously in a crisis. It's 17% down from pre-pandemic levels in terms of attendance. And what do you think will bring it back to where it once was, in your opinion?
I think that there was a glut this year, and everyone knows it. There were too many new musicals at the same time. And for me personally, I think there were too many adaptations of films, and I think that gets a little exhausting. I think the biggest hits among plays were not necessarily the ones that people would have thought. You know, they're the ones, Stereophonic and Appropriate, and
That's really what I want to say. I mean, it sounds so basic, but there's that famous quotation, right, about what the theater needs is a drastic reduction in the cost of tickets and a drastic increase in the quality of plays. I mean, that's still what we need. We talked so much about Merrily and about Stereophonic because this is special work. It's good work, and people wanted to see it.
Jan, you get the last word.
I just think we need to be able to get the word out. When Adam talks about there were so many shows at the end of the season, it isn't just because those of us who needed to see it had to see a lot of shows. It's that the shows didn't have a chance each one to shine. And we need to get the word out better about these individual shows. There is something on this list for all different kinds of audience. They just need to know about it.
Well, I think the three of you have done an excellent job in getting the word out about everything on these pages. So I thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us. We look forward to bringing you more fascinating conversations with artists and professionals who work and live only to astonish us. I'm Patrick Pacheco.